Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 216. Mount Jiao Degradation to Slavery. The enormous Mount Jiao returned to its tranquility. The blood vines disappeared and the corpses controlled by the Zhenlong chess formation all sank into the depths of the earth. Nangong Zhongying's final order to the Jiao dragon's spirit was death. Even his descendants couldn't change it. The moonlight illuminated the mess on the ground. After Nangong Si released the last arrow, the cloud piercer's bow in his hand gradually dimmed due to the loss of Nangong Zhongying's spiritual power. In the end, it sank. He dripped blood on the ground. Almost at the same time that the barrier was undone, Ye Wangzi rushed over and knelt by his side. "Don't move, don't move." Her voice was trembling. "I'll heal you." "Forget it. I am still alive and kicking, but if you heal me, I'll probably end up seeing the Grand Sect leader sooner." Nangong Si coughed softly and pushed Ye Wangzi away. His black eyes looked towards Jiangshi. "Sect leader Jiang, I'll have to trouble you." Jiangshi nodded and said, "I'll do it." He was the sect leader of a medical sect. If he was willing to lend a helping hand, he could naturally do something that others couldn't. Jiangshi's jade-white fingertips rested on Nangong Si's wrist. Almost as soon as they touched, his pupils slightly contracted. Then, without saying a word, he and Nangong Si exchanged a look. He could clearly feel that Nangong Si's spiritual core had already shattered. From now on, he was no different from an ordinary person. He couldn't use magic or spiritual power anymore. There was no way Nangong Si didn't know about this matter, but Ye Wangzi was right by his side. As such, he looked at Jiangshi and slightly shook his head in an imperceptible manner. "How is it?" "Sect leader Jiang, how is Asi?" Jiangshi silently withdrew his hand. Then, he took out a light crimson porcelain bottle from his kinkan bag and handed it to Ye Wangzi. "He's fine. His injuries aren't critical, so Miss can rest assured. Keep this medicinal powder and apply it to the affected area every day. You will be healed in 10 days at most." After Jiangshi finished speaking, he condensed his spiritual power into his fingertips and successively tapped several acupoints on Nangong Si's body. Finally, he covered the sword wound with his palm and the blood stopped flowing after a while. After doing all this, Jiangshi stood up and said to the crowd, "We can't stay here for too long. I'm afraid something might happen. Let's go up the mountain." He turned to leave, but the conversation between Ye Wangzi and Nangong Si still drifted into his ears. He heard Nangong Si whisper to Ye Wangzi, "I already said it's fine. It'll be fine in a few days. Why are you still crying?" "Sigh, how did I become so useless?" All right, it's just some small wounds." Jiangshi closed his eyes. He recalled the words that Nangong Si had mouthed to him when he thought that his life was hanging by a thread. He sighed and led the crowd up the long white jade stairs leading to the ancestral hall and heavenly palace. From the foot of the mountain to the top, they still had to pass through 3 checkpoints, all of which required the blood of the Nangong family to be smeared on. However, Nangong Si didn't need to cut his finger and drip blood at this moment. He was already injured all over, so he could easily dispel the enchantment barrier with just a touch. All the way up, they didn't encounter any more obstacles. When Nangong Si smeared his blood on the dragon eye of the white jade dragon carving, the last heavy stone gate slowly and solemnly sank into the ground. The heavenly palace at the top of Mount Jiao appeared in front of everyone. It was a divine palace surrounded by spiritual aura. Outside the palace gate was a dense forest. At this moment, they were standing outside the forest. Through the colorful flowers and vines and the gurgling water, they could see a long flight of stairs leading up to the sky. There was a total of 9,990 steps. The stairs were so high that the ancestral hall at the top seemed to be lying on the clouds. They could only see an ethereal shadow. Under the moonlight, it emitted a lustrous light. It was like the Guanghan Palace, like the Lingxiao Hall, not knowing whether it was heaven or earth. Almost everyone who saw this ancestral hall was shocked by its magnificence and workmanship. Then, they felt anger, jealousy, greed, and covetousness, all kinds of different feelings welled up in their hearts. Among them, the most speechless was Villa Master Ma. He slapped his forehead and wailed, "Heavens, such a long flight of stairs! You can't fly on a sword on Mount Qiao. How long will it take to walk on foot? This is another mountain." Huang Xiaoyu smiled and said, "This old man doesn't have any malicious intentions. It's just a joke." In this old man's opinion, the esteemed Nangong Zhengying really doesn't need to ascend. He was able to create such a heavenly palace. With this, what's the difference between being in the human world and being in the heavens? Suddenly, someone coldly said, "The Rufeng sect's heavenly palace was built by the third-generation sect leader, Nangong Liu. After 2 generations, it was completed by the 5th sect leader, Nangong Xian. This heavenly palace has nothing to do with the esteemed Nangong Zhengying." Huang Xiaoyu was speechless. He turned around and saw Chu Wanning's extremely cold face. When Mo Ran saw this face, he knew that Chu Wanning had almost reached his limit. If more fuel was added to the fire, the old story of how he had drawn Tianwen to beat people in Kaidi town would probably repeat itself. Chu Wanning said coldly, "Like cultivator Huang, I also don't meant anything bad, but before you read the book thoroughly, you'd better learn to be careful and prudent with your words." Huang Xiaoyu had always cared about his face. In front of all the juniors, he was exposed by Chu Wanning so mercilessly. For a moment, he was extremely embarrassed. His lips moved and he was about to say something to refute Chu Wanning when suddenly he heard Zhang Shi say, "Huang Xiaoyu, how can you joke about Nangong Zhengying's pure reputation?" At Zhang Shi's words, his status and prestige were self-evident. Huang Xiaoyu's face instantly turned ashen, but he still forced himself to be calm and laughed dryly. "Sect leader Zhang, you don't have to take it seriously. This old man already said that I don't mean anything malicious. Do you think I'll condone your evil intentions just because you said you don't mean anything malicious?" Zhang Shi coldly rolled his eyes and cast a sidelong glance at Huang Xiaoyu. He didn't even want to look him in the eye. "Do you think I'll tolerate your ignorance just because you're old?" Grandmaster Chu was a grandmaster, but in the end, he only had ability and no real power. But Zhang Shi was different. Nowadays, if Gai Yuye coughed, the cultivation world would tremble. Huang Xiaoyu broke out in a cold sweat and suddenly didn't dare to say anything more. Zhang Shi flicked his sleeves and coldly entered the forest. He walked towards the long stairs at the end of the forest. The rest of the sect leaders glanced at Huang Xiaoyu with either disdain or sympathy. Of course, there were also those who completely ignored Huang Xiaoyu and simply passed by him and left. The abbot of Wuobei Temple even sighed, "Meatbun." If it weren't for the situation, Mo Ran probably would have laughed out loud. They walked in the forest, but after a few steps, Nangong Si said, Zhang Shi asked, "What's wrong?" "Orange trees." Nangong Si looked around. There were orange trees everywhere, blooming white-orange flowers. How can there be orange trees? What was originally planted here were all Dragon Lady spiritual trees. Look over there. Before he finished speaking, a sharp-eyed young cultivator suddenly pointed at the spring in the distance and said in a low voice, "There's a person over there." Everyone looked in the direction he was pointing. Sure enough, they saw a man sitting with his back to them next to the spring and under a lush orange tree. He seemed to be busy with something. Xue Zhenyang frowned. "Is it a person or a ghost?" Mo Ran said, "I'll go take a look." His Qinggong skill was excellent. In the blink of an eye, he nimbly and silently hid in the nearby forest. Then, he cautiously circled around to the side. He was stunned. Because he saw the man's face clearly. It was Nangong Si's father, the last sect leader of the Rufeng sect. Nangong Liu. What's going on? Wasn't Nangong Liu fed with the lingqi fruit? He should have been tortured to death for 365 days, but why did he look so calm and composed right now? He was even in a good mood, sitting next to the clear spring, washing a basket of oranges. The spring rippled with waves and the silver moon was reflected on the surface of the spring water. Nangong Liu had a dreamy expression on his face as he hummed a little tune. He washed the oranges one by one and then put them into the basket on his back. It's best to be in the prime of your life. Light hooves and fast horses, see all the flowers in the world. Nangong Liu gently hummed. His sleeves were rolled up and his arms were soaked in the clear water. His arms were intact, and there were no mottled scars on them, just like how those who ate the lychee fruit should. Mo Ran's brows furrowed. He could clearly feel that something was wrong with Nangong Liu. This person had obviously been made into a Zhenlong chess piece. Moreover, unlike the corpses in the tomb, Nangong Liu had obviously retained a large part of his consciousness. Just by looking at his behavior, he was not much different from a normal living person. How is it? Xue Zhenyang saw that Mo Ran had returned so quickly and immediately asked anxiously. Mo Ran first looked at Nangong Si, and then said in a low voice, "It's Nangong Liu." Many people present had a grudge against Nangong Liu. On the spot, there were cultivators who pulled out their swords. That bastard! I'm going to kill him now. Nangong Si's eyes were dim, and his face was shadowed. He lowered his head and said nothing. Mo Ran said, "Something's wrong. This Nangong Liu is obviously also being controlled by the Zhenlong chess formation. But what's strange is that there are no scars on his body from eating the lychee fruit. I think it's better not to rashly alarm him." Chu Wanning thought for a while and asked, "Can the effect of the lychee fruit be removed?" It was best to ask the Gai Ye sect with this kind of question. Han Lin Divine Hands said, "It can be, but it's more troublesome. I think that Su Xuanglin would not give him the lychee fruit and then go through so much trouble to help him remove the curse of the fruit. It's completely meaningless." Zhang Shi said, "No matter what, Nangong Liu is here. Su Xuanglin should be in the ancestral temple. This time, we didn't come here in vain." As he said this, he suddenly caught a glimpse of a shadow in the distance. Zhang Shi turned his head, and the others followed his gaze. They saw the former sect leader of the Rufeng sect walking out of the forest with a basket full of oranges on his back. He was holding a cane in his hand, which tapped on the ground. His steps were light and quick. When he got closer, they could see that there was actually a bright smile on his face. Nangong Si had originally made up his mind not to look, but in the end, he couldn't resist. He looked up at his father, and his eyelashes fluttered like cotton in the wind. He couldn't tell what he was feeling at this moment. Hatred, heartache, or something else. He didn't know. He wanted to look away, but that figure was like a fish hook. Once caught, it was impossible to escape. At this time, someone who couldn't hold back his emotions suddenly shouted, "Nangong Liu! Today, I'll let you pay with your blood." With a whoosh, the arrow left the bowstring and went straight for the back of Nangong Liu's head. It was too late for the others to stop it. However, that person's archery was not good, so the arrow was slightly off target. The whistling arrow pierced straight into the basket on Nangong Liu's back, piercing through several oranges. Immediately, many people cursed in their hearts. This was the disadvantage of having so many people in a group. There would always be a few idiots who would get mixed in. But at this moment, it was meaningless to care about which idiot shot the arrow. The important thing was that Nangong Liu had already noticed their existence and slowly turned his head. Seeing so many people standing in the mountain forest, Nangong Liu was stunned for a moment. Then, he walked towards them, his face still had that vague color. He walked closer and closer. Many of the cultivators had already flashed their swords a few inches. Pairs of eyes stared at him with extreme vigilance. Under the pressure of these thousands of eyes, Nangong Liu seemed to finally feel some of it. He somewhat sluggishly stopped and stood still in the swaying shadows of the trees. Everyone. As soon as he opened his mouth, the dead silence was broken. Suddenly, dozens of people couldn't hold back and subconsciously took a step forward. A few people even unsheathed their swords. Nangong Liu suddenly smiled. This smile was very familiar to the leaders standing at the front of the formation. This was the flattering and warm smile that Nangong Liu used to show everyone. The palace master of the Taxia Palace was stunned. This. The leaders looked at each other. They all felt that this chess piece was too strange. They didn't know what medicine was in the gourd. At this time, they saw Nangong Liu brush his left and right sleeves and pull them down. Then, he actually knelt on the ground and kowtowed respectfully to the thousands of cultivators. Aya, this Nangong Liu give his greetings. Distinguished guests have come from afar. Sorry for not going out to meet you. Sorry for not welcoming you properly. As he kowtowed, more than half of the basket of oranges on his back rolled out and scattered around him. After Nangong Liu finished kowtowing, he knelt on the ground again. He put down the basket on his back and tidied up the oranges without shame. Under the stunned gazes of the crowd, he continued to tidy up the oranges. Then, he rubbed his hands and said with a smile, "Distinguished guests, are you going to see His Majesty?" His Majesty. Mo Ran instantly had goosebumps. After all, this was what he had been called for nearly 10 years. When he heard the words His Majesty, he habitually felt that they were referring to him. The other sect leaders were confused. They looked at each other. Xue Zhenyang even smiled bitterly. For a moment, no one said anything. Seeing that everyone was ignoring him, Nangong Liu scratched his head in confusion and asked carefully, "Distinguished guests, are you going to see His Majesty?" Jiangxi was speechless. Nangong Liu was a little discouraged, but he repeated, "Distinguished guests, are you going to see His Majesty?" Distinguished guests. Mo Ran cut him off and asked him calmly, "Who is His Majesty?" "His Majesty is His Majesty." Nangong Liu saw that someone finally paid attention to him. He was very happy and said, "If you want to see His Majesty, you have to keep going up. But he is very busy and may not have time to pay attention to you. He has great matters to attend to all over the world." Xue Zhenyang finally couldn't hold it in. Even in such a hostile atmosphere, he couldn't help but laugh. Great matters. Haha, what great matters? He is in charge of a mountain of dead people, playing chess by himself. Is this a great matter? Ha 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 ha, this Su Xuanglin, he is too funny. Mo Ran's eyebrows were faintly covered with a layer of uneasiness. He continued to ask, "You mean that he is in the heavenly palace now? Although he is very busy, we can go and see him, right?" "Yes." Nangong Liu said, "Of course you can go and see him. If he closes the door and refuses to see you, you can just wait for a while. His Majesty will come out when he is done with his work." Okay, I have to go up too. The oranges up there are finished. I have to put some more quickly. Otherwise, His Majesty will be angry again. As he said this, he left, leaving the others looking at each other. What should we do? Should we go up? Could it be a trap? But Mo Ran had already taken the lead and rushed up. He walked quickly and followed behind Nangong Liu, who was carrying oranges on his back. He also left the others behind. Finally, he was the first to arrive at the heavenly palace, gasping for breath. Standing in front of the main entrance, he raised his head and realized just how vast and majestic this palace was. Just the two doors of the palace had the power to cover the sky and the sun. On the left side of the door was a soaring dragon swallowing the sun, and on the right side was a fire phoenix spitting out the moon. The sun and the moon intersected, shining brilliantly. The gaps of the dragon's scales were filled with melted pure gold. The phoenix's feathers were inlaid with jewels and gems, lingering on the ground. Hanging on the roof of the palace were whale oil bronze lamps, which had not been extinguished for thousands of years. Under the illumination of these tens of thousands of candles, the heavenly palace gate shone even more brilliantly. Moran thought that the gate would be extremely heavy and difficult to open. However, when his finger touched the surface of the gate, it was only a light touch. Along with the muffled sound of thunder, the heavenly gate of dragon and phoenix did not require him to use any more strength and slowly opened inward. The moment he saw the front hall of the heavenly palace, Moran was stunned. What kind of strange scene was this? End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 217. Mount Jiao Nightmare. He walked on the long walkway at the middle of the heavenly palace. Every brick under his feet shone like thin ice, reflecting his figure. Thud. 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 Step by step, the sound of his empty footsteps echoed in the hall. But Moran was not alone. He was standing in the middle of the hallway of Rufeng Sek's heavenly palace. Both sides of the walkway were densely packed with people. Men, women, the old and the young. They all had different expressions on their faces. He stood in the middle, which was like a small city. To his left were the corpses of the members of the Rufeng sect and the people who had wronged Su Xuanglin. They had all been reduced to a pitiful state with their bodies dismembered by 1,000 cuts and tortured in all sorts of ways until they died. They would then be brought back to life only to be tormented again. On the other side, there was singing and dancing, where the people were free and unfettered. He even saw Luo Xianxian, who was probably not her real soul, but an appearance made by other corpses using illusions. She was under the control of Zhenlong chess formation, much like how the Mer people in Jinqinj Lake were. Luo Xianxian's hair was tied up in a bun. She was with her husband, Chen Bohuan. The two of them looked peaceful and leisurely. He also saw Master Chen's youngest daughter. She was sitting beside her brother and sister-in-law, talking to them with a smile. Luo Xianxian was leaning against Chen Bohuan. When she heard something interesting, she would cover her mouth with her sleeves and smile brightly. The scene was beautiful and dreamy, but it only made chills ran along Moran's spine. He paced in the long walkway where half was hell and the other heaven. Good and evil were clearly being depicted. On his left was full of laughter while on his right was painful moans. He walked forward, as if he was walking through water and fire, light and shadow. He looked to his left and saw hundreds of butterflies fluttering in the air over clusters of flowers. A stream of water flowed out from behind a pillar and there was clear wine flowing in it. Beside the wine stream, some people were reading books leisurely, some were reciting poems, children were laughing, and women were lying on their bed in a drunken stupor. He looked to his right where a cauldron with boiling oil was over a fire pit. Writhing bodies were doused in boiling oil, their tongues were pulled out and their hearts were being pierced through. People cursed and tore at each other, their eyes flashed with a cold light like that of a wild beast. He also saw the former abbot of Wuobei Temple, the old monk who had single-handedly plotted the conspiracy behind the Lingshan Mountain Conference. He was surrounded by 3 people, each holding a small, rusty knife in their hands. They were cutting his face, legs and chest separately. Cut after cut, the flesh that was cut quickly recovered, and the cycle repeated. The old monk kept screaming, but it was an indiscernible roar. His rumor-making tongue had long been torn off. The more Moran walked, the more he shuddered. He didn't even want to look around anymore. He could hear crying and laughing from angry and happy people. A woman on the left was chanting softly, life and death, loneliness and destiny. A lover can't call out for his lover's response. On the right, a woman was screaming, being bitten by a vicious dog. Half of his peripheral vision saw light and the other half saw darkness. The light and darkness were absolute, like chess pieces on a chessboard. Black and white faced each other, good and evil were distinct. Moran only felt a splitting headache. He stood in the middle. He simply stopped and closed his eyes. He didn't want to see the scene of the 9 heavens and the purgatory mixing together. He stood in place, waiting for the rest of the group to catch up to him. Falling leaves startle the remnant dream, leisurely strolling in the fragrant dust, counting the falling red. No. Don't do this to me again. I beg you. Save me, save me. But the voices on both sides were endless, like arrows, penetrating the wood. He heard Luo Xianxian saying gently to her husband, Chen Lang, the orange flowers in the courtyard have bloomed. I'll take you to see them, all right. At the same time, he heard the former sect leader of Jiangdong Hall, Qi Liangji, laughing crazily as she said, adultery. Ha 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 ha, yes, I'm having an adulterous relationship with Nangong Liu. I'm a slut, a whore. I'm a slut, a poisonous woman. I killed my own husband. I want to be the sect leader. Ha 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 ha, all of you come and see my true face, see what an ugly bitch am I, ah ha 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 ha. Everything was gathered together. The living, the dead. Reality or illusion? Was it black or white, good or evil? The voices around him gradually rose and fell like tides. He seemed to see 2 giant dragons breaking out of the water as the moonlight shone on their cold and wet scales. Were those 2 evil dragons? No, those were his 2 spirits. They began to fight again, roaring and spitting dragon's breath, biting and colliding fiercely. The earth trembled and the mountains shook. Mo Ran couldn't stand the crazy noise. He covered his ears, but he still couldn't block out the 2 chaotic sounds. Finally, he couldn't stand it anymore. He raised his hand and was about to cast a spell of silence. He suddenly opened his eyes. The scene around him disappeared. Mo Ran became terrified. He was stunned on the spot. What happened? Why did the scene around him disappear? Where was he? Why was it so dark everywhere? He was surrounded by boundless darkness. Was this an illusion set by Su Xuanglin? Mo Ran looked around, but there was nothing, only darkness. He walked a few steps and tried to call out, Shizun. Shuemeng. Has anybody come? No one answered him. Everything was dark, a deathly blackness. Even though he had seen countless storms, this kind of darkness was still terrifying. He walked forward. Goosebumps appeared on his arms, but still he continued to walk forward. Suddenly, he saw a faint light in front of him, which seemed to be the exit. He walked towards that place. Suddenly, figures appeared around him. He couldn't see their faces clearly, but he heard those people's ravings as they knelt down in front of him like a tide. Those people were chanting. Though their voices were low, the sound gathered into a rumbling river. Congratulations to the Emperor, Taxian Jun. May he live as long as the heavens. Taxian Jun? No, no. He stammered, he trembled, and he shuddered. He tried his best to run forward, but it seemed like there were thousands of hands coming from all directions, trying to hold him down. Your Majesty. May Taxian Jun be blessed for eternity. Longevity is endless and blessings never end. Mo Ran was being driven mad. He tried his best to break free from those invisible hands as he ran towards the light. No, it's not me, go away, all of you go away. Taxian Jun. But those voices followed him like shadows, lingering. Mo Ran began to think that Su Xuanglin had gathered the souls and evil spirits of the ghost realm. At this moment, they were all out to catch him, a ghost who had escaped. Why are you leaving, Your Majesty? Your Majesty, Your Majesty. Mo Ran staggered, and his eyes flashed with a crazy light. He wanted to leave, but all the evil spirits were hindering him. He was trapped and he had no way to escape, so he suddenly became angry. He turned his head furiously and suddenly, pulled out his sword and slashed those shadows into pieces of darkness. His face was like beast, he was almost as ferocious as a real one. Get lost! He roared, all of you get lost! Get lost! As soon as his voice fell, his face turned pale. He heard the people around him murmuring and snickering, "Your Majesty." He said, "Your Majesty." Yes. He said, "Your Majesty." Your Majesty, were we in the wrong? You should know who you are in your heart and where you came from. You can't escape. Moran held his sword and retreated, shaking his head. "No, it's not like that. It's not like that." The black mist that he had cut into pieces gathered again and a blurry shadow fell in front of him, closing in on him step by step. The shadow said softly, "What do you mean? I'm not Taxian Jun." "How are you not Taxian Jun?" The voice was ethereal and soft, like thin smoke curling up in the summer. "Of course you are. Every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. Only you can't escape." "But it's over." Moran stared at the shadow. "It's over. Taxian Jun had already died in front of the sky-reaching pagoda. Since he died, he no longer had anything to do with me. I just. The shadow smiled gently, as delicate as a flower stamen. "You just what?" Moran was speechless. "You're just a soul that had returned." It asked, "You're just a physical body with a memory? You're just an innocent that lived in Taxian Jun's shadow? Or, are you just a dream?" If it could be said that he was angry and scared before but after the sentence, Moran's emotions were like ice, the blood in his body froze. He was almost at a loss and did not react. He wanted to speak, but for a long time his mind could not form a complete thought. When he finally opened his mouth, his voice was dry and he could only dig out a broken word, "Dream." "You've thought that you were reborn, but who can say for sure? Do you really think that it's true? At this moment, is that the real you, or is it me?" The blurry smoke surrounded him, becoming clearer and clearer. "You said that you died in front of the sky-reaching pagoda, but you're standing here alive. Are sure you died?" Moran stared at the black smoke. He was no longer trembling, but he felt cold, as if he had fallen into an ice cave and stepped into a bottomless abyss. It was so cold. Did he really die? The desolation of the Wushan palace seemed to still be in his bones, and the flames of the uprising of the major sects were like long snakes that slithered from the foot of the mountain, trying to bite off his neck. Xuemeng seemed to be standing in front of him just a moment ago, with tears in his eyes as he said fiercely, "Moran, give me back my Shizun." Did he really die? He remembered that he took the poison and felt the poison melted through his heart and lungs. He staggered to the front of the sky-reaching pagoda. With the last of his strength, he crawled into the grave and lay down in the coffin. The haitang flowers bloomed gently while the light of the sky and the shadows of the clouds lingered. He closed his eyes. Then you opened your eyes. You went back to the year when you were 16 years old, to the time when everything could still be salvaged, right? The black shadow seemed to be able to see through his heart as it whispered with a low laugh. You came back to the old Shisheng Peak. Although Rufeng sect has turned into scorched earth, it wasn't you who did it. Ye Wangzi didn't die and neither did Shi Mingjing. You've realized your own feelings. You've fallen in love with Chu Wanning. You've become Grand Master Mo and he's finally accepted you. You thought you were free. You became a young hero of your generation. Now, it was you who were leading the group to persecute the evil Su Xuanglin. There was a deathly silence. The blood vessels on Moran's neck were pulsating, along with his intense heartbeat. The black shadow did not have a face, but it was staring at him. He knew it was staring at him. You wish. The cold sword pierced his heart and the poisonous fangs dig into his neck. Moran could feel despair spreading in his body, just like how the deadly poison that he drank when he was 32 years old. It spread, into his liver and gallbladder, into his heart. You didn't come back to life at all. Everyone is dead. Xuemeng is still alive, but he hates you very much, the black shadow said. Now you have woken up from your dream. Open your eyes, Taxian Jun. You are still the Lord of Darkness. No. Mo Ran heard someone speak. The voice was so weak and broken, as if it had been broken down countless times and was just glued back together. Then he was surprised to find that the person who said this was actually himself. No. He urged the courage in every inch of his bones and every drop of his blood. He opened his eyes, and there was a burst of madness in them. You are lying. That's impossible. Absolutely impossible. He gathered his sword and slashed, panting furiously. The cloud of black smoke dispersed again. But its voice lingered. It was laughing in a low voice. Lies. But your majesty, why don't you look down and see what you are holding in your hand? End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 218. Mount Jiao, the Emperor's Return. He lowered his head and suddenly lowered his eyes. His blood almost flowed backwards, his brain was buzzing as he saw Buletengui. In his hand was the blade of 100 battles, the holy weapon Buletengui. The pitch-black saber glinted maliciously in the night, its hilt was slender and hard in the style of the Tang sword, without its sheath. On the hilt of the saber, which was inlaid with a golden ring, 2 characters were engraved, Buletengui. The green fields and vermilion bridges of our past. Another year goes but still you do not return. Mo Ran looked as if he was struck by lightning. The light in his eyes was as thin as a needle while his face was paler than a dead person, more hideous than a ghoul. No, 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 don't. He was almost desperate. He threw Buletengui to the ground, but the holy weapon was connected to his heart. It automatically returned to his waist. No. Mo Ran was hysterical. He tried to summon Jiangui. He wanted the red willow vine. He summoned it again and again, but Jiangui did not come. His willow vine whip, his Jiangui was gone. Only Buletengui was with him. Do you believe it now? The haunting shadow gathered again. This time, it gathered faster than before. Soon, it had a shape. 4 limbs, a waist, a head. Mo Ran refused to believe it. He cannot believe it. He no longer cared about the black smoke as he ran to the end where the light was. This was an illusion set up by Su Xuanglin. This was just an illusion. Go to the place where the light was and everything would be fine. He ran madly in that direction, but once again, his arm was held tightly. Mo Ran did not want to care who was holding on to him anymore. He shook it off as he shouted angrily, "Go away! Go away! What is real? How could you know the reality better than me? I know what is real. He treated me well, that's real. He did not die, that also real. How can the things that he and I have been through all these years be fake? Jinchinj Lake, Peach Blossoms Spring, the Ghost Realm, Kaidi Town, we got married." That voice gently interrupted him, almost sighing, "Aran, I'm the one who married you. How can you not remember?" He suddenly turned his head around and saw that the black fog had already condensed into a form. A face that was as beautiful as a lotus flower, extremely charming. It was truly a peerless beauty in the world. She gently snuggled up to him. She wore a head full of pearls and jade hairpins and draped in the bright red robes that she wore when she got married. At dawning peak, "I can't walk anymore, so you carried me up. You told me not to call you Your Majesty but to call you Aran from then on. Have you forgotten?" Her smile was as gentle as a blade of grass, but the strength in her hands was shockingly great. Mo Ran struggled to break free from her grip. This was definitely not Song Kayutong, as his wrist was already bruised. He continued to move forward, the white light was getting closer and closer. He seemed to know that it was the way out. "Go over there. I just need to go over there." He heard Song Kayutong laughing behind him. "Your Majesty, where are you going? Chu Wanning is already dead. You've already killed him. Do you really want to go over there?" "Over there is He did not hear clearly. He broke free from the restraints of those phantoms and malicious spirits. He ran wildly, throwing her voice to the back of his mind. The pure white light in front of him grew brighter and brighter, bigger and bigger. He was like a person who was about to drown at the bottom of the sea. He used all his strength to push his legs and swim towards the shaking and shattering light. At last, he suddenly plunged into the magnificent white light and the darkness disappeared. He gasped for breath as he felt how weak his legs had become. He could not stop to panting. Just like a person who had just emerged from the water, he greedily breathed in. For a while, his eyes had to adjust to such strong light. He raised his arm to block his eyes. After some time, he heard the chirping of birds and smelled the faint fragrance of hatang. He slowly opened his eyes. Where was he? The first thing he saw was a lush hatang tree. The branches were bright red, like the multicolored light of a brocade. He was not in the ancestral heavenly palace of the Rufeng sect. Was this illusion still not over? However, his mind was gradually falling apart. He suddenly was not so sure about who he was. Which one was the dream? Which one was reality? He sat up. A hatang flower had fallen on the tip of his nose and fluttered down to his lap. Sat up? Only then did he realize that he had been lying down, as if he had just woken up from a nightmare. He looked around. He was in front of the sky-reaching pagoda in Shizun Peak. As for himself, he was sitting in a pitch-black coffin with its door open. In an instant, Mo Ran felt as if his fingertips were cold. He was in a daze for a while. Then he suddenly got up and staggered out of the coffin. He saw a tablet in front of the coffin. There was not a single word on it. Instead, there was a bowl of wontons and several plates of stir-fried food, all of which were his favorite food. He stared at those things. He stared at the coffin. No. No. The nightmare was not over. He fell into an even deeper nightmare. Or, was he actually awake now? Could it be that what the Black Shadow said was true? Did he really just take poison, lie down in front of the sky-reaching pagoda and had a very long dream? Everything in the dream was. He did not dare to continue that line of thinking. He got up like madman and hurried straight to the southern peak of Shizun Peak. However, it was different from what he remembered before he died. He remembered that he had clearly told everyone to leave. However, when he was halfway to his destination, a group of palace servants rushed out being led by Lu Gong, who had served him for many years. Lu Gong was holding a box and his wrinkled face was full of joy. Your Majesty, the elixir of rebirth has been found. This is the elixir of rebirth. He stopped abruptly. Everyone knelt down to congratulate him. Lu Gong also knelt down. A pair of withered hands held up the brocade box. He trembled as he handed it to Mo Ran. He said hoarsely, the elixir of rebirth that your Majesty has been looking for. Finally, the heavens had been moved. This is it? Mo Ran said in a daze, no. Didn't I told you all to go down the mountain? The servants' faces were ashen. They kept kowtowing. Lu Gong was also extremely frightened. Your Majesty, why did you chase us away? Where has this old servant failed to serve you? What about the great sects? Lu Gong was confused. He looked up blankly. What great sects? Your Majesty, what happened to you? Mo Ran knew that he could not explain clearly, so he pulled him to the sky-reaching pagoda. As soon as he came out of the forest, he pointed to the tomb in front of the tower. Look over there. I just lay there. He turned his head, but found that his coffin and tomb were gone. There were only two tombs there, that of the Empress and the concubine. On top of them were his crooked calligraphy. Mo Ran. Lu Gong asked worriedly, Your Majesty, what's wrong? Mo Ran stared at the two tombs in a daze. His mind was in a mess. For a moment, He could clearly feel that all of this was false, but then he felt that reality and illusion had blurred together. He could not tell where he was or what year it was. Lu Gong sighed and said, "Your Majesty, you are worrying too much. Were you dreaming?" "It's not a dream." Mo Ran muttered, but then he shook his head. His face was pale. "No, of course it's a dream," he said incoherently for a long time. Then he suddenly turned his face and stared at Lu Gong. "Then where's the elixir of rebirth?" Lu Gong then presented the box. He didn't take the box. Instead, he opened it directly. Inside, there was a pill as white as jade, exuding a gentle luster. He trembled as he picked it up. The jut in his throat bobbed. Then, he walked in the direction of the Red Lotus Pavilion. However, Lu Gong suddenly pulled him back. Mo Ran turned his head. His nerves were already stretched to the limit. He was about to snap. He asked, "What's the matter?" Lu Gong, who was very amenable, suddenly had a gloomy expression. His eyes flashed with a strange light as he said, "Your Majesty, aren't you going to the wrong direction?" "What do you mean by I'm going on the wrong direction?" "The place that your Majesty should go is the soul summoning platform," Lu Gong replied as the servants slowly surrounded him. They were slowly closing in on him. "Your Majesty, all this time, haven't you been thinking about reviving your Shixin, Shi Ming Jing?" "Now that the elixir of rebirth is in your hands, why does your Majesty wanted to run to Red Lotus Pavilion instead of the soul summoning platform?" Lu Gong said faintly. "For the sake of securing a method of rebirth, your Majesty killed millions of people, trampled on the Rufeng sect, and caused the world to be filled with mourning and rivers of blood. Could it be that after doing all this, your Majesty actually wants to go against your original intentions and take this elixir into the mouth of another person?" Mo Ran's heart was in a mess. He tightly gripped the elixir. He said, "You don't understand. Your Majesty must go to the soul summoning platform. You must not go to the Red Lotus Pavilion." Everyone's eyes flashed with a terrifying light. They surrounded him and repeated, "Your Majesty must go to the soul summoning platform. You must not go to the Red Lotus Pavilion." Mo Ran firmly protected the elixir. His face was pale as he said, "All of you, get out of my way. Your Majesty must go to the soul summoning platform. Get out of my way." He pulled out Buletangui and held onto that ice-cold saber hilt. The people around him seemed to shrunk for a moment, and then their eyes became as long and narrow as snakes. Each and every one of them revealed a twisted smile. "You will suffer retribution. What do you think you can change? You're breaking your promise. You're fickle. How can this kind of heartless person be worthy of the elixir? Take it back. Take it back." Mo Ran protected the elixir. He fiercely cut open a bloody path and ran towards the southern peak of Shi Sheng Peak. Whether this was a dream or reality, he knew that Chu Wanning was there. Whether he was alive or dead, he had to go there. He had to be by Chu Wanning's side. Only then could he feel at ease. He ran into the barrier of the Red Lotus Pavilion. Lu Gong and the others were blocked outside by the barrier. He turned around and glanced at them. Then he closed the bamboo door. He didn't want to see anyone else. This was the Red Lotus Pavilion. He was the only one here, and Shizun. His eyes widened in shock. He saw that Chu Wanning was standing under a haitang tree. His hair was tied up in a high ponytail and he wore a metal glove. His expression was focused on adjusting a night wanderer that was almost complete. The wind rose. Light pink flower petals rustled and fell. They fell like the first snowflakes on the stairs and on the table. They fell gently like ripples. Mo Ran's eyes were wet and red. In an instant, he was choked with sobs. "Shizun." Chu Wanning heard his voice and raised his head. Because he was busy, he was still biting on a small file. When he saw Mo Ran, he was slightly surprised. He put down the file and then straightened up. He nodded at him and asked, "Why are you here?" End chapter.